Oh,
How are you doing? Already.
okay. So it sounds like the dance is gonna come on tomorrow. What's that?
I said, he texted me.
I'll take my phone. I'll clear it up.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks.
I knew that was no.
Yeah.
No.
I forgot you were the person to do it.
Well, and that's what I was just remember. I was just going to come up here. One of them. My problem is I have hair working my office. No, because that's what we haven't done. Oh, yeah, we talked about them all. We decided on everything.
You wear glasses, dude. Us engineers like everything. Okay, sister. I know I use that as a fire starter.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's right.
Yes.
I know that.
Yes.
Because it was like a week ago. Oh, yes. It's recorded for listen to. No, I haven't. I would never get rid of it. And to listen to this. I haven't died.
We're ready, right? This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. May we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Present.
Commissioner Vogler. Here. Commissioner Freeman.
Here.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Present.
Commissioner Sandberg.
All right. We'll now have a moment of silence
you very much. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first order of business, can everyone hear us out there okay? So far, back rows, back views. Okay. So first order of business are our consent items. Is there a motion from the commission for consent items?
Chairman, I'll make a motion we pass consent items A, B, C.
For a second.
I'll second.
So motion by Commissioner Friedman, second by Commissioner Hoagland. Roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hopper,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Four.
Motion passes. Tonight, there are no proclamations, no scheduled public comment, no public hearings, no ordinances. We have several resolutions to attend to. The first resolution is resolution number 4719, resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign agreement with the Montana Historic Preservation Office for grant for local historic preservation for period April 1st, 2017 to March 31st, 2018. Ms. Lowry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an ongoing grant that we receive annually to support the historic preservation activities that go on within our community. So it's just a continuation of ongoing funding that we receive. And we would ask that I be authorized to sign this so we can continue those activities without interruption.
Is there any, well, maybe we start with a motion from the commission.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 4719.
I'll second that.
So that's a motion by Commissioner Hoagland, a second by Commissioner Schwartz. Commission discussion? Questions, clarification? Is there any public comment? Is that a clap or for Ray? We're gonna get done quick.
That's it.
Oh. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Hopper,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Four.
Motion passes. Second resolution is resolution number 4722, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing donation of a fire truck to RW and JW Enterprises for display and as consideration for in-kind services. Ms. Lowry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can invite Chief McInnes to come up to the front for more specifics. This is an older piece of equipment that we had purchased on surplus that currently has absolutely no value whatsoever to us. It does not function in any capacity in any of the equipment that we utilize for fire protection, fire services, or in our EMS services. So I'll allow Chief McInnes to speak to why it has no value specifically and why we're seeking to donate it. But
this was a piece of equipment that was acquired by the city free of charge a number of years ago when we were doing our ISO rating. And it was acquired just so that we would have a piece of equipment to put out of what is euphemistically called Station 2. It was equipped with hose and was put into service long enough to get the ISO rating, and then quickly taken back out of service and parked as a reserve unit. With our new engine coming online in 3 to 4 months, we don't need this one for ISO, and we'll have a much better piece of equipment in place. And the current condition of it is the pump doesn't work, the ladder won't pass inspection, the hydraulics have failed, and the motor needs to be completely rebuilt. It did start this week, first time in the year. So I've checked with 2 different vendors of used fire trucks. A restored unit of this vintage, completely restored, goes for about $12,000. He looked at the pictures and said it was $20,000, $30,000 to restore it, and he wouldn't even look at it for scrap. So The one person that's interested in taking it as a donation is going to use it. If you're familiar with the movie Cars, there's a fire truck in that. He's going to dress it up as that and use it as a kid's display.
All right. Any more illuminating facts on that piece of equipment?
Would you like to see John?
All right. Are there any points of clarification from the commission at all? Commissioner Holtman?
Very simple one. Does that, as far as insurance, then more insurance slightly?
It will not affect it. Actually, it won't affect our ISO rating at all because we're going to have a better unit as a reserve unit, one that actually works.
It will go up probably with a better unit and then down, and not down with this. Okay.
No.
All right.
Our ISO rating won't change. It will, when they come to do a reinspection, they'll be happier with what we're putting in as a reserve unit than what we currently have.
Any other points of clarification? What is the year of make?
77,
77.
40 years
There's
old.
there's no like, for like old cars, people buy them and fix them up and, parade them around, but no one wants to do that.
Not this one because it would take huge amounts of money to try and fix. Generally, when people do that, they're either a much older vintage or they're in better shape to begin with.
Who's RW and JW?
They're the company that do our annual pump testing. They're out of Four Corners, Belgrade area. And a private operation that does pump testing on fire trucks around the state.
Is there any public comment?
Is there any value to that, the pump that's on it at all?
No, it doesn't work.
Can I take that to the fire hall? I just thought that'd be a really interesting display piece for the gym. For the fire hall.
You have to talk to the person who's going to donate it.
It's just an interesting thought. It just popped in my head. So
You may be able to work to get it out of there. It's
I can imagine.
fairly substantial as well.
So I'll shut up.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions, thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate it. Is there a motion from the commission on resolution number 4722?
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we pass resolution number 4722.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by motion by Commissioner Freeman, second by Commissioner Schwartz. Sounds like. All right. Is there any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Holtman,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Four. Motion passes. The next resolution is resolution number 4721, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the chairman to sign the amended perpetual right-of-way easement with Vista LLC for the purposes of construction, maintenance, operation, service, repair, and replacement of city streets, sanitary sewers, and water lines. Ms. Lally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just a minor revision of boundary lines in and around Murdoch's. It does necessitate a revision and refiling of the document. So this is just minor changes to the boundary line. There are certainly no changes to the utilities or any of the plan for how things will be structured or placed out at the Murdoch site. But we do need to redo the perpetual easement to allow for that boundary line change.
All right. Well, let's, on this one here, why don't we start with a motion? Is there a motion from the commission to, for resolution number 4721?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 4721.
Second. So motion by Commissioner Holtman, second by Commissioner Freeman. Is there any commission discussion clarification? Is there any public comment? It was hard, I only have one question. It's hard for me to see where the boundary change was. Was there an arrow that indicated it?
So this is kind of like the difference between the plans for a prospective project and then the as-built drawings that you're getting back when it's all finished, so you know everything went. So these are adjustments to the easements for all of the utilities that are involved in that project. And so this is the final, this is the exception to the final construction where they were. Is there anything else?
Speak to that? Just a
Yeah,
little bit?
yeah, please. Punch in through it.
What has occurred here is after the construction of the building, the owner of the entire property, there's two lots involved. 41A and 42A, I believe is that. They're labeled B on this graphic. That is the new survey, because they're changing the configuration. Currently, this lot line continues to here, one lot, two lots. What they're proposing is to erase this boundary, one lot, two lots. So in doing that, they have to change the nomenclature and label these lots different from A to B. Thus, this easement document needs to reflect that as well as a new survey number. The only material change that I'm aware of in the easement itself was an as-built issue. We moved the fire hydrant, which had an easement in the middle of the parking lot, which is no longer there, so we erased that since we were redoing the document.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Is there any other clarification from the commission?
Jim, I don't know if this is your question. Why would property lines move like that? And just for future reference, and what would the advantage be?
That's a business choice made by the developer. Murdoch's doesn't need that rear piece apparently, and they want to add it to the property that's available for future development.
Okay. Sorry, I thought the whole property in this picture was Murdoch's, and it was just split into two pieces. So that's why I was asking.
It's always been two pieces, and one was remaining vacant for future development.
Yeah, and I thought that was all Murdoch's. Thank you.
Any other commission questions or clarification? Any public comment? Do we have roll call, please?
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes?
Commissioner Copeland,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
4. Motion passes. Our next resolution is resolution 4720, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to amend the city's professional service agreement with Advanced Engineering and Environmental Services Incorporated, AE2S, for water treatment plant upgrade, WWTP design, and to enter into an agreement for construction administration services on the water reclamation facility project. Ms. Flowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, as a point of clarification, there was an article published in the Enterprise, yesterday's edition, I believe, that referenced an increase in the overall cost of millions, potentially, to this contract. I just want to be clear for everyone here and for the commission that the design contract and the construction contract, construction management contract, have always been separate, have always been built into the costs that we have given everyone. There are separate contracts for design and for construction, so there is no $1 million increase that we are seeking at this point for this project. I just want to be explicitly clear because the article was somewhat misleading in the information it provided. So I just want to make sure that we're on the record as being clear that these are expenses that have always been included within the overall project cost. That being said, the first part of this resolution addresses amendments to the design contract. This is to get this contract into compliance with the formats required by USDA. When we agreed to the funding with USDA, there are obviously different forms and formats and paperwork that they want as part of their overall process. So we've had to essentially redo this contract to put it into their format. The second part of this addresses the amendment, which is for the construction management portion, which I'm going to invite Shannon and the 82S and the TD&H and WET team up to the table here. They have a presentation to kind of go over the construction management portion of this contract so that everyone can fully understand what that construction management contract entails. But we are seeking approval of both so that we can move forward with this project in a timely manner and get it out to bid.
Further clarification, the additional documents we received before the weekend, one of them was a 93-page document. Which document was that?
That's the entire, that's the whole, that's the EJ. I'm never gonna get that, the EJ CDC contract, which is a format required by the USDA.
So that's the amended construction contract. The amended
Design
design
and
contract.
construction administration.
Oh, okay, design and construction administration. That's the entire thing. Just so, so you know, it's very difficult to get that on a Friday and have it digested by this meeting. So maybe in the future we can get something a little sooner. Unless we don't need to approve it tonight.
We are seeking approval tonight for this contract. Some of the elements of that contract are time sensitive in terms of what we're getting from other vendors and other aspects of this project. So understood, and we'll certainly strive to do more time with something like that. Certainly is a
Very
large-
difficult to read 93 pages of detailed material within that time frame, especially when you're not an engineer. Thank you. All right, gentlemen, take it away.
Well, first of all, I want to introduce, everybody knows Scott. He's been with us for the last year as a project manager. Of course, Keith is our city engineer, and this is Steve Nichols. He works for WET, or Water Environmental Technologies, and a little background history on that firm is they actually are doing a lot of the remediation work for the Livingston restoration. So I'm very proud to present what I think is probably the best engineering team that the city of Livingston could have for the construction of our big wastewater treatment plant moving forward. So I will turn that over to Scott and he can start with the presentation.
Thanks, Sharon. Commission. This is just the first page of that contract. I'm sorry that it only landed on you on Friday. I can get into. I'll get into eventually why that was. We were trying to get it to you before the typical Wednesday deadline, and it did go from I think a 10-page design contract that we had with you as of last year to a 94-page USDA compliant EJCDC document. So the USDA RD rules, basically, a lot of that you don't necessarily want to read, but the guts of the contract are still the same for design. And we want to be absolutely clear about that. This is an amendment, but it's replacing the contract that we already had with you. None of the numbers that we already negotiated for design are changing. The only difference in the numbers are for the construction administration contract, which, as was discussed, was always planned to be separate. You put out an RFQ a year ago, a little over a year ago, for design and potentially construction administration. But that was always at your own will. And when Shannon and I were negotiating the design contract, you let me know that construction administration was not going to be part of that because in part you wanted to make sure that you liked our team. So that's why it was split, and that's why now we have a 94-page document that's replacing that original design contract, but it's also covering the new construction administration contract. And we did that because it's more efficient than having two 94-page documents that one covers the old design, one covers construction administration.
If I may add, certainly myself and Courtney have read through the whole document, and while I can't speak for Courtney, I know we've had numerous meetings to go over the USDA requirements, and we are comfortable with the document as presented.
We have very little control over the content. To the extent that we have control, we've exercised that.
Thank you. So cost-wise, the only thing that we hadn't seen before was the, not the design portion, but the construction management, as far as the cost goes.
Correct. Next slide, please. The additions are the construction administration, which is the resident project representative, RPR, so that's the inspector. And then all the typical gamut of construction administration services, submittal reviews, requests for information from the contractor, change order reviews, pay application reviews and disbursement to the funding agencies. That's what's all in there. And that's the part of the contract that you all did have some control over, is what is the scope? What are we doing? And that's what we worked through with your staff. And then it now has the instrumentation and controls integration, startup, and SCADA programming services. Those sometimes are put in the general contractor's scope. More and more you're seeing those put in a professional services agreement that owners procure, and the reason is you want control over who's writing the programming for all of the plant, who's providing the networks and the computers, and really the brains for the treatment plant. So that's something that is in this construction administration contract that was taken out of the cost estimate for construction, because now it's part of this contract, and that's about $200,000 the total. We also have materials testing and special inspection services, which often you would see put in the general contractor's bucket. But with USDA, they require that to be an independent third party, so the owner can procure that. And TD&H can provide those services, so we provided them in this contract using these two. We have RPRs, the resident project representative, for 20 months. We had originally been talking about an 18-month construction schedule, and that was our rough estimate. For some reasons I'll explain in a minute, there's could potentially go beyond that, and it's just good to have a little bit of contingency on the true time and materials type activities. So having somebody out there is totally dependent on how long it takes the contractor to build projects. Just be aware that this is based on inspection services for 20 months. And then now we have dewatering the groundwater potential contamination and having to treat that water. And I'll get into that a lot more, but we basically need 2 work plans with DEQ. We need a pilot plant out there ASAP, and that was actually the reason it took us till Friday to get this document finalized, was getting the cost narrowed down on how much that piloting work was going to cost that Water and Environmental Technologies is going to do. That's not something you would typically see in a construction administration contract, but you don't typically see construction projects on a Superfund site. I'll get into the evolution of that a little bit more. But those are 5 things that are covered in the cover letter that are basically new. Next slide, please. The cover letter you all have, but the breakdown of the cost there, I'm just calling out there what is design. So that's those first 5 line items totaling $1.24 million approximately. So that was the contract we negotiated last year That's now supplanted by this document, this new contract, but the numbers have not changed. The new numbers are the 1.612 million down under subtotal. And the total contract amount, this total amended contract amount is $2.85 million. The 1.24 of it is already spoken for. Next slide, please. This is just a fee spreadsheet that we use to break out hours and services provided. This is what we were honing in on, especially in terms of the pilot plant for the treatment of the dewatering wastewater. And this is where that $1.6 million number came from. Next slide. This, Shannon's coached me to always come with these updated total project cost spreadsheets. These are the spreadsheets we use with DEQ, USDA, TCEP, basically who's going to pay for what portion of the project, but also maintaining our thumb on what's the total project cost. There are some new costs from what I showed last month. The soil and groundwater contamination services during construction that are going to be provided by WET, along with costs to TDMH and AE2S to administer that portion of the contract at $254,000, and that's the first line item on the bottom there. And then right now we are planning for worst case that we're going to have to treat the dewatering wastewater, meaning the contractor's going to have to treat it, and I have that at $500,000. And that's the best estimate we can give at this time, but that is a new cost. And I'll get into where that came from. So those items at this point, this spreadsheet that's used by the USDA and DEQ is not going to be changed again by them until bids are open. But in the meantime, when I'm tracking things that are changing, they have told me to just take it out of contingency. So you see the contingency there in red is now at $503,000. Last month when I put the spreadsheet up, it was at about $1.1 million. So that money came out of contingency for what we're estimating construction costs are going to go up for this dewatering wastewater treatment. We probably will not go into construction with $500,000 of contingency on a $12 million kind of construction project. We'll want more than that. But we'll work with USDA and DEQ, and your team will be involved, your staff will be involved on where that additional contingency comes in. If bids come in as we predict, will it come out of SRF or USDA loan, or your money, where will it come from, how will it go into the overall budget and get paid for? So just be aware that this spreadsheet right now is just for us to do gut checks on where the overall budget is, but none of this is set in stone. This is all yet to be worked through with the funding agencies.
May I have a point of clarification?
Yes.
On the $500,000 contingency, where did you see it was in the spreadsheet here? What line?
It's that third line from the bottom there.
Is that the same?
So last month, it's not on, I think he's looking at the spreadsheet.
This one here.
Oh,
We are in red. Okay.
This is just for our purposes.
503.
Yeah, this 503 number.
Okay.
These
I
numbers
have
have
it.
that sheet.
Okay, I got it. No, I have it.
You do?
Yeah, it's USDA-RD cost summary.
So
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
total project costs don't change at this stage. We just ate up some contingency because we realized that the contractors potentially have to have some treatment equipment on site. I got it.
Next slide. So to back up a little bit, explain how we got to here. The design right now, I'm calling it about 98% complete. We submitted it to DEQ. We just got their review comments this week. And all those comments are relatively easy for us to address or explain to them that we're not doing something because it's smarter to not do it, and it's basically just a back and forth with the regulators on what we're doing and how it complies. And if we did something in the 95% set that doesn't comply and we agree with them, then we change it and fix it. And that'll take us roughly a week. But there's a note in there that says they are requiring a DEQ approved work plan for contaminated soil and groundwater, which must now include this pilot study. And this came up on a conference call with them last week.
So, groundwater treatment pilot study. I mean, you're gonna drill wells into the water table?
We're going to drill one well. WET is putting together sort of the best estimate of what the treatment train needs to look like. Probably GAC and air stripping or something. There would be a skidded plant pumped from that well through the treatment process and show that we can comply with the standards to get rid of dewatering waste. And then we'll write a work plan that will go into the bid documents. And the contractors will read it and say, okay, I know I need to have X amount of capacity using the treatment process that can remove PCE down to 0.7 parts per billion. So I'll get into that a little more. I know it's not totally clear.
When the railroad was required to do some remediation, a lot of wells were drilled throughout the community into the plume area. I know that the wastewater treatment plant is in the plume area, correct? Correct. Was there any wells in that area already?
Yeah, we just went through this with Shannon on, are there wells down there we could use for that pilot? Or there's actually a manhole that you all have used for irrigation water for years that might serve well for that purpose. None of the wells are right, within 200 feet of where we're going to be doing the majority of the digging. But Steve's going to figure out if that matters or not. If it doesn't, then we'll use one of those we'll use that existing irrigation well more than likely.
That would be pretty shallow. And the readings in the wells around there that we already have, how are the readings at this point, do you know? Yeah. I'm sorry to ask these technical things, but this is.
It's okay. So there's a network of approximately 6 to 10 groundwater monitoring wells sort of surrounding the facility. None that I know of on the wastewater treatment plant property itself, but several surrounding. We get mixed results. The PCE concentrations generally vary a bit seasonally. However, they do demonstrate that you're right, the treatment plant construction site is in the plume. It's on what they call the facility boundary, meaning anything within the contaminant plume. Therefore, treatment would be required.
So I just want to clarify this. So we're going to have an ongoing treatment during and after and continuing after construction of the groundwater. Is that my understanding?
No, not quite. What we're proposing, what DEQ is requiring is step one would be a pilot scale treatment test where we demonstrate a treatment technology can reduce groundwater PCE concentrations to the levels that they require. Step two would be to scale that pilot system up just for construction because the contractor is going to have to dewater in order to install some of his infrastructure, some of the deeper infrastructure. Once construction is complete, that dewatering system and treatment system can be turned off and abandoned.
So Steve's scope is to procure the pilot system, the small plant, prove that it can be done to DEQ, write a work plan that tells the contractor what to do. The contractor's going to go and procure a bigger system to handle the flows that they're going to put out when they start excavating to build the structures and put in the pipelines.
And just so I understand, I'm assuming that dewatering means pulling that water out so that when you're digging down, you're not encountering it, and you can construct off of it. Get that? Start to.
Next slide, please. This just shows that note. This came from Jerry Paddock, who is our reviewer on the MPDES side of DEQ. So we're dealing with two sides of DEQ. We're dealing with the folks that regulate the treatment plants and the surface water discharges. And that's who I've been dealing with for a year and deal with all the time. But then we have, what's the division called from remediation?
Site response.
Site response. So there's another arm of DEQ that's responsible for discharge of any of the contaminated dewatering waste. So we've been getting those folks, trying to get those folks together to figure out what's the smartest way to discharge of the water coming from the dewatering. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Next slide. So this is a slide I showed last month or about 2 months ago. That, you know, we always had this issue that it's a state Superfund site, and we designed the plant to be as high as possible within practical considerations. You don't want pipelines above grade, obviously. You don't want to pump for 30 years more than you have to, for example. These are all biological reactors. You don't want them up in the cold if you can prevent it. You want them below grade to the extent you can. You need to get it down to the frost line anyway, the slabs. So we kept it as high as we could. Could you go back one slide, please? And then WET's been dealing with DEQ on the remediation side throughout this. They helped us with the work plan for the geotechnical, for example, because when we drilled to test the geotechnical investigation, we had contaminated soil and groundwater at that point too. So this has always been an issue. At one point, we were thinking that we were going to be able to do this with drag pumps and smaller trenches and discharge it on site right back into the plume, or discharge it into the treatment plant under that permit and get rid of it that way. Once we had finalized our pipeline elevations and our slabs and worked with WET on data on the groundwater elevations during the summer, and they have a groundwater model, we realized that we were going to have too much water to dispose of it in a trench right back into the aquifer, especially during the high groundwater period in the summer. So that still might be a method the contractor uses when groundwater is lower, but we have to prepare for this condition of highest groundwater during June and July, which is when contractors typically like to be working. So unfortunately, those two coincide. So that's when DEQ said, well, you're going to have to put in treatment, at least have provisions for that, and you're going to have to show us that you have a plan for the contractor that's going to work, so that we're not discharging anything from the plume that's above standards. Next slide. I won't get into the weeds here, but these are all discharge methods we have been discussing with both arms of DEQ. And all I'm showing here is that we have tried to get as creative as we possibly could of how we can minimize this whole issue. But because of the volume, because of the construction schedule, and because of the plume, the best path forward right now is to set up a bid document, a biddable set of contract documents, where the contractor can say, if I want to build and excavate in June and July, I know I'm going to have a lot of groundwater, but I'm going to treat it, I'm going to put it in the back end of the plant, and I'll comply with that way. If I want to wait until October and work until end of November and then shut down and start back up in February, then I know I'll have a lot less water. And maybe I'll put that into the plant, or I'll dig a trench and put it back into the site. So that's what Steve and Wet are going to help us develop with this pilot study and work plan that will go into the contract documents. So that's where their scope came from. Next slide. This is just a bar graph showing water surface elevations in that irrigation well that I just spoke of across the months of the year. So the spikes are June, July, and then it starts to taper back down into the fall and remains low until late April generally. That's generally. We're somewhat in uncharted territory these days with these early snow melts. And so this is just a rough idea. The data behind this graph we're probably going to include in the contract documents for information for the contractor, and probably let them superimpose pipelines and the slab. The major slab for the reactors in the control building is on the right, just to show you where it falls in that the groundwater bounce. So if you were out there trying to pour that slab in June and July, you're going to be in the groundwater. You're going to be pumping potentially thousands of GPM and having to treat it and put it back into the plant and discharge it. If you want to try to wait, we want them making these decisions and figuring out what's the most efficient way to build this facility, not us telling them what to do. But if they wanted to wait and put more crews out there and try to get it done in September, October, November, then they could do that. Next slide. I just put this up to show where that irrigation well is in relation to where most of the construction work.
This is that irrigation well. If you remember from last month, this is where the reactors are going to be here, the control building about here. So that slab is going right here, and then the majority of our pipeline work is going to be leading up this kind of central portion of the plant and connected to a lot of existing piping and existing tanks. So, it's over here. It's not perfect. We might use it, but we might end up drilling a well closer to where the actual work is, and then we can know for certain where groundwater is, where the contractor is going to be excavating. So my only point there is if we have to drill a new shallow well for the pilot project, it will have some value besides just for the pilot. And we'll leave it there for the contractor to use it as a dewatering well as well.
I'm assuming that when this goes out to bid for a contractor, all those parameters are going to be in there, so they'll understand when they're bidding that that's going to be part of the process.
Right, and
That's an unusual part of the process, I would think, in most wastewater treatment plants.
it is, and we will point them down that road as clearly as we can with the sequence of construction, putting in clear indications of that there's a seasonal aspect to construction here, not just warm weather, cold weather, but high groundwater, so that they pick up the trail. Next slide. We would still like to bid this as soon as possible. DEQ putting that requirement that we have the work plan, that it has to be based on the pilot study in the bid documents, puts a road bump in there for us. We have a regular conference call with all the funding agencies tomorrow. We meet with them monthly at this point anyway. And we were going to talk to them about the potential to go ahead and advertise for bids with the dewatering treatment methodology or data still a little bit open, but keep the bids open until we nail that down. And then, so we're not awarding without anybody's authorization, without DEQ or USDA, without their buy-off. But we would like to go ahead and advertise potentially we think that might have some benefits with the contracting environment. So we're still exploring that, and we're very close to being bid ready. But I think we'll have more news on that after tomorrow. And that's just showing a couple of scenarios of the work plan schedule. So Steve has to provide a work plan for the pilot, has to get the pilot running, get the data, and then provide a work plan for the general contractor for us to include in the bid documents. So that could potentially take probably a couple months. Next slide.
You have another.
Sure.
Since we're still talking about dewatering, what is the total guesstimate? I know it's a guesstimate until it goes to bid, but according to this, you said 500, and is the 254, 747 also part of that as well? So I'm trying to come up with a number that we're adding into.
The 254 is for is the cost due to this issue that's in the construction administration contract. The 500,000 is the best estimate we can provide at this moment without the piloting data, without the groundwater elevation data for the contractor for his treatment system or her treatment system. And then I also increased the construction cost estimate by $200,000 for dewatering only, not treatment, because that's work that would have had to be done regardless of the contamination, regardless of the plume. But those are placeholders right now. They're not based on a lot of design work and investigation work.
So to restate, so the 254, 747, 500, and an additional 200,000.
Correct. Correct. So we understand that we've all been working very quickly here to get this all together. But the reason is we want to get wet moving on the work plans and the pilot as soon as possible, because we have to push that through DEQ and USDA. And that's why we stayed on target last week and went beyond that typical Wednesday submittal. And I know the construction administration contract is a big number, but it includes several line items that are somewhat atypical for a construction administration contract. And I'm just reviewing at this point, but that's the dewatering, treatment, piloting, and oversight. So that's WET's portion of the scope, which is about $200,000. The materials testing and special inspections that TDH is going to provide. The USDA RD funding administration requirements. So my team is scoped with getting the contractors' invoices and reviewing them, the pay applications, making sure they're correct, but then also channeling those to 4 different funding agencies. And then the INC and SCADA programming that I spoke of that sometimes is put in the general contractor scope, and that's another $200,000.
Those costs are in your cover letter?
Yes.
Amendment number 1.
Yes.
Correct.
Now, when you're saying things like, what was the last number you said there? That's usually in the general contractors. What was
The INC and SCADA is, I believe it's $208,000.
Okay. All right.
The dewatering, treatment, piloting, and oversight is right at $200,000 for WET. There's also some money in there for my team as the prime. There's materials testing and special inspections. That's key scope. I think all told, we estimated that there's like $600,000 of work here that is in addition to just the tried and true construction administration services.
So, and again, I just want to refer to it because some of the numbers you're saying, I'm trying to follow when you're talking about that amendment number one. So we have, in amendment number one, we have basic services, phase 060 construction, 832. Okay, when you're going through this list here, you're referring to these areas here, these costs in this letter, correct?
Yes and no. I'm trying to break out for you in here what is above and beyond just the run-of-the-mill construction administration services.
Okay.
Some of those are within these numbers.
Okay.
Only instrumentation and control at the 208 is really its own independent line item.
Okay.
So this is broken out by the phases that are in the scope of that EJCDC contract. That's all this table is doing, is pulling those out for you. But the breakdown of that is not the breakdown of this. This is just me trying to show you why the construction administration is 1.6 and not 1.1.
Okay. All right. These are the other criteria that's increasing the cost for us on that. Thank you.
So I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah, so the next slide just says questions.
Okay. So I'm sure there's going to be a few questions. So if you all hold on for just a moment, we'll get through those. So while we have these gentlemen here to answer questions in detail, are there any other detailed questions or clarifications on the commission? Commissioner Schwartz?
Yes. Okay, back to the professional services phase. And amendment one that James was talking about. Now these numbers are already in. We already have those in.
Yes. Can you
Just breaking it out more, or
the 1.239 million? That portion was set in stone a
right?
long time ago.
That already got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Now this is above and beyond what we've authorized now. This amendment one, the construction
Yeah, I don't think we've
management.
authorized these costs at this point. Is that correct? We never had a resolution for,
That's what we're doing right now.
that's what we're doing right now. Yeah, so this is the first time we're really.
That's the first time we're going over these numbers.
Yeah.
That's what I
This
thought.
is the first time for the construction.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we're looking at an increase of 1.6. But was that always kind of figured in anyway? With our,
Last, I think it was
I think
the
we,
first meeting in February, I had estimated 1.1.
oh, that, okay, that I heard.
That did not include the INC SCADA programming, and that did not include remediation of contaminated groundwater.
All the things you just listed in that last slide.
Right now.
Two biggest items in that slide.
Now, resident project representative, 442,000. What is that? What all does that entail, personnel wise?
That's one person on site full time whenever anybody is building. That's daily reports, photos.
Just ensures that the project's being built. per
And that's
plan
based on-
specifications.
Based on an 18-month,
20 month.
20 month.
Yeah, and that person would live here in Livingston, would move here and work out of a trailer on site. And that's, yeah, you have to have an RPR under DEQ and USDA. If that wasn't a requirement, sometimes you'll see lighter coverage, but full-time coverage is standard, and these 4 funding agencies are involved.
So as a percentage, what is our, what are we coming out to here percentage-wise? Or is the construction fee, what's our percentage at? What are we about?
Typically base that off your construction
Yeah,
estimates.
but yeah, where are we at? About, what's the industry standard?
We're slightly above 20% at the 1.24 for design plus 1.6 for CM. And industry rule of thumb would be we used to use 12 and 10 for design and construction administration services. We had USDA has numbers for treatment plant work that I shared with Shannon during design that are in that same ballpark. It's, you know, it's not like building a highway or a long linear pipeline. It's a mechanical facility, lots of electrical and process equipment. And
Oh, yeah, we're working within a site that's being maintained at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Understand and appreciate that. I agree with that.
Okay. Chairman, or Quentin, Commissioner Schwartz, I apologize, but I do want to give Scott and his team some credit. I mean, we've been negotiating this for about a month, and some of the things that don't show up is there's not any overhead being charged for any TV and engine services because they are our city engineer, which I think is very important. And they've also agreed to lock in their rates, their hourly rates based on 2017 for the duration of the project. So I appreciate that they understand how important this project is to the community of Livingston and how fragile our tax base is. And so I felt like they've compromised on some issues. I just wanted to bring that to light, that those can be some pretty considerable numbers.
Thank you.
Mr. Friedman, you have anything?
I'm all set.
Mr. Hoagland? Thank you. So when you're mentioning that a normal percentage for, or a standard percentage might have been 10 to 12%, we're above 20 at this point?
sorry, that's 10 to 12 for design, 10 to 12 for construction.
Oh, okay, so
So total 20 to
20 to
25.
24.
Exactly.
I see. And we're at it somewhere in the 20s someplace, did you say?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on where bids come in, but we're right there. And we have, in my opinion, a more complicated project.
Yeah.
Right, and we're also including some services that would normally be in the general construction contract.
Okay. I guess I want to elaborate on that a little bit. Back when we did the preliminary design report, Scott and his team had about $300,000 in the INC SCADA and instrumentation, and because they've done the design, they have the institutional knowledge. We're getting that facet of the project at $208,000. So there's been some cost savings with keeping that with Scott's team throughout the construction costs.
Now, would it be, I guess this is a question for the administration, would this be, so we're looking at this, the administration of the oversight of the construction and all these other components we have here. They're totaling 1.6. How would we normally do that? Do we actually bid that out as a city? Or is there a bidding requirement at all? No?
No, it's a professional service.
It's a professional service.
Okay. So professional services, we don't get those on that.
And this is part of the reason why we left it as a possibility when we did the initial design proposal. So that, again, we could make sure that we were pleased with the team, pleased with the work, and then we would move forward with awarding based on that. And if there were, had there been deficiencies in that design process, we would have the option still of going out to bid for the construction side if we felt it was needed. And we are certainly thrilled with the work that this team has done, and there's no need to pursue that.
I was just gonna say, USDA would never, will allow this had we not already gone through a competitive qualifications process with you for construction administration.
Okay. All right.
And I will tell you, just from my personal belief and standpoint, it gets complicated when you have an engineering firm come in and do a design of a project, and you bring another engineering firm in to do the construction management. So when you have any technical questions that need to be answered by the design team, you're having another firm go through the city to get that information. So there's certainly some efficiency that happens with keeping that in-house.
Yes, that definitely makes sense. I would agree with that because I've seen that in other type of professional services where once you get intimate with a project, it's hard for someone to obtain that same intimacy with the project right away. It's going to take them time.
Well, I will say this, we would probably technically still have to have 2 contracts in a situation like that, because anytime a contractor is requesting information, the original design firm still has to spend some time to provide that information.
Right.
In addition to the time that the third party is asking for it and passing that information along. So
that could be a cost savings for us.
it could.
Yeah. One last thing that comes to mind for me, and maybe you could break this down just a little bit because, we're not professionals in this area, but when I look at the resident representative and approximately 22,000 per month, how does that break down? How do those costs break down?
Most of that is their time on site, but there's overhead with paying for their rent. And I think with per diems for meals, photos of the site, and just a little bit of reimbursable expenses for printing and distributing daily reports.
The bulk of it would be based on the contractor's work schedule on a weekly basis. And rarely on a project of this size are you going to see a contractor just working 40-hour weeks. I would say it's going to be at least 50, if not more. And we certainly want them to be on site at the time the work's being done.
So we'll get our money's worth out of that personnel.
Well, and to be honest, we actually have that type of person, maybe not as technically qualified as the person we're going to have on this project, but any of our infrastructure projects we have in town, we require a resident project inspector to be there.
Right, thank you very much, appreciate that. Commissioner Schwartz?
Yeah, just who is the resident project? That it's gonna be somebody from your firm?
It is,
Okay.
yes, and we went through negotiation process on that too.
Okay.
We had a couple of people that we showed to Shannon who had various strengths, and we settled on Mr. Kaepernick, and he'll be here next month, and if this goes through, and we'll introduce him. And, he's coming off the Livingston wastewater treatment plant RPR services. He also did the same for Watford City, and he's
Good. Thank you. I yield back, James.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Schwartz. So just to, at least in my mind, just to wrap some of my questions up, the administrative costs of the project and the design phase, my understanding is that those typically take 10 to 12% of the cost of the project, each one of those. And right now we're about 20 to, we're between 10 to 12, so that's 20 to 24, and we're within that as this estimate is right at the moment.
Yeah, based on the current construction cost estimate, we are well within industry guidelines for how much this should cost.
And just another question came up, and that's usually what we seem to find is on these large construction, very technical projects, we'll periodically get change orders as time goes on. And they're usually not change orders taking the cost down, but usually going up. What do you gentlemen see as areas where those type of things where you're making your professional best guess in these areas, the best calculations you possibly can, but what are areas that in a project like this we typically see change orders because of unforeseen circumstances that come up? Maybe even in the test pilot, the remediation of the water, soil, that could always be one, but I'm hoping that taking a look at the wells around there already to kind of get a sense of where that whole food is in that general area. But what other areas might come up?
Anytime that you're doing anything that you're digging underground, you always have the potential of finding something you didn't know was there. So that would be definitely one of the number one things like that we usually encounter is that's one of the big reasons for a change order is like, oh, I didn't know that pipe was there. We didn't know that was there. So that's one of the big mysteries is whenever you can't see below something, you have the potential of hitting something that you would have not otherwise accounted for. Like you just said, if for some reason we start pumping a whole bunch of groundwater and all of a sudden we get a way higher concentration of plume than any of our models say, I mean, I guess that would be potential problem source for us. For some reason, the contractor wasn't able to treat the water, and that shuts them down. So
I think obviously the groundwater, in my opinion, would be the highest liability as far as additional costs, but I'm very confident we are going to, with the team we have here, we're going to do the best possible job to lay out all the options and the work plans and give all that information, be very transparent with the contractors. As far as the facility goes, Scott and his team, I think, have done a fantastic job. We've had our Jerry Paddock from SRF do a review. They've done numerous internal reviews. And one of the strategies moving forward as we get closer to advertising this project to bid, the way we create the bid schedule for this is another good way of trying to minimize the potential for a change order. I would love to be able to tell you that a project of this size will not have one, but there are a lot of strategies from an engineering perspective that we can put additional pay items in there on higher risk areas where we, instead of going through a change order, we maybe pay for additional material or pipe costs or something like that if something unforeseen comes up. And then certainly having a measurement and payment section that really clearly defines the expectations for that certain aspect of the work really helps minimize the probability of change orders. But as far as the facility, obviously we have to currently run and operate and meet our discharge permit for our current facility. And so could be some unforeseens that come with that as far as the sequencing of events, but we're going to make it very clear to whoever we award this project to that it's paramount that we maintain our permit compliance until this project is completed. But outside of that, the new facility, with the new tanks and the control building, I feel very confident. We've done an excellent job of being very clear with that facility. The aerobic digestion is pretty straightforward. So I think if and when a change order arises, I think we'll be able to sit here as a group and tell you that we did our best, but this was something that was totally unforeseen.
I think that's another reason why the funding agencies require that contingency.
That's correct. Yep. And on a project where you're building a new treatment plant inside an existing operating treatment plant, it'll be about things that are out there that were put in either in interim periods when somebody wanted to lay a pipeline at some point in the 1990s and didn't save the drawings or something. It'll be that kind of thing, or some concrete repair on a tank that we want to use that we didn't foresee. I think the thing that we try to target more than anything is the big ticket items. So you're not going to not have any change orders, but the change orders you do have, you want to minimize the costs. You might see on a plant like this, on a project like this, a fair number of $2,000, $4,000 kind of numbers, but what we want to avoid is the $100,000 number.
We would like that too. Yeah, I'm not trying to minimize. I know this is extremely technical, extremely detailed. So, appreciate the work and the hard work you put into this so far. And of course, the presentations help out tremendously because, even though a lot of the technical things may not stick with us, it's good to know that, we can get through this process and understand a fair amount of the details that go into it. So really appreciate the presentations and everything. And I don't have any more questions at this point. Does anyone on the commission at all have any other points of clarification they need? Is there anything else? I think we went through quite a bit tonight. I think it was good. Do any of you gentlemen have any other things you want to bring out at all or highlight?
Just one last thing is we appreciate the compliment. That was very well taken. One of the other aspects of this construction management that has not been talked about tonight, and I hold very dear, is just continuing the communication with you as the commission and the public about this project and being very open and transparent. And we're going to do an excellent job of keeping this whole community updated as this construction project begins all the way to completion. So we put a focus on making sure that Scott has time and his team and all of us sitting at this table are available to you and the public throughout to answer any questions and provide guidance, because it will be a very exciting day in 2018, 19-ish when we have a ribbon cutting and we have all the commissioners down to show off our brand new facility.
So the updates should be on the website. That's part of our costs, right? Correct?
It is. We have a line item in there for about the same price. I think it was like $5,000 to maintain that website throughout construction. It'll come in valuable with dust control or traffic control, or we're going to have dozens of concrete trucks on the road. We'll use it for public outreach and maybe try to increase the traffic to it, because I don't think we're getting a lot of folks coming through there right now.
And there's a link on the correct? And on your, or on the public works page. Okay.
Any other points from the commission? I'm sorry, I thought of another one. Seeing that a lot of this extra remediation with the groundwater and the soil and everything is due to practices in the 20th century with our railroad here in town. Is there any anything from the administration that we can do, to reclaim some of those costs through the perpetrators?
Because of the existing litigation, that would be something that we would want to deal with in another meeting.
Okay,
And hopefully in a litigation session.
okay. Did I say too much already?
I have a question on that too. I stole my question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take it back.
So I know, and I was hoping these guys didn't have to hear this question or have to be involved in the sense that it's not really about the project as the possible funding mechanism of one of the costs. So with the settlement, it has to do with cleanup. Now we're cleaning up, but now the city is doing it. So can we use some of that settlement money, which I know there's some left, to help clean up?
That would also be a question to be discussed in that litigation session.
Let's put that on the list for sure.
Let's put that on the litigation session list.
Yes.
All right. So for these gentlemen, part here, is there any public questions or comments? Yes, please. Why don't you make a space for at least one person involved? You guys will probably have to answer it, I think. But. And again, as you know, just state your name and address for the record and go ahead and sign that.
Thank you. Patricia Grable, 204 East Calendar Street. I just have a couple of questions. Was there ever an economic impact study done in terms of the local economy on this project? I mean, the impact of coming up with $17 million out of our local economy, was there ever a study done on how that will affect our local economy by anybody?
No, there wasn't a study to specifically address economic development. This is a project that we're required to complete to meet DEQ standards and maintain our wastewater treatment plant. So while I'm certain there are some economic impacts, we have to do this project. So it's not an optional.
And thank you so much. When I was on the commission 10 years ago, we were told that E. coli was going into the river. And therefore we had to do multi-million dollar, I can look up at the amount, water treatment plant in order to not have E. coli going into the river. Otherwise, we would be in great trouble. So we were told that that would last for at least 20 years. So of course, as a commission, we didn't ask any questions. We just said, sure, let's do it. And then about 5 years later with the new commission, there was another emergency, and E. coli, oddly enough, was still going into the river. And I was there when we did the $100 million lawsuit was perpetrated, was filed against Burlington Northern. And I followed that very closely. As a matter of fact, I have a personal hero. Her name is Amy Reynolds, and she is with DEQ. And I believe that that is the person who actually works so hard to try to mitigate the impact of the plume upon this community. And working with cancer right now, I know that there are a number of cancer patients within the plume area that have not been identified. So when I was on the commission, I asked the wrong questions to the commission. Didn't like it much, but I said, why are we putting a water treatment plant in a carcinogenic plume? That was my first question about the time the $100 billion lawsuit was going on. And I commend you on thinking in terms of using some of that settlement money to go ahead and address the issues that come with that water treatment plant being in the carcinogenic plume, because it is. If you look at those old maps, you will find it is. But the other question I have so I have a little jaundiced view of all this and how much information a commission gets. So I would like to see, are there any workshops for the public? So if they're going to carry a heavy financial burden like this, can we get a workshop going or some sort of informational meeting going at the Beanery or someplace so people can find out what this is all about? I mean, we'd be willing to sponsor that.
We have had numerous public sessions and public information sessions that have all been publicly noticed, put on our website, tours of the facility, where we discuss changes that we would be making as part of this remodel, redo, rehab, recreate of the system. So we have done numerous public outreach sessions already, and certainly we will continue that as we go through the process of building this plant.
Well, maybe we'll just sponsor one and then invite people so that in layman's terms, they can understand what's going on.
And that's what we've been doing and we'll continue.
Yeah. But maybe if local groups do this. The other question I have is, how much what is the requirement for using local businesses, local companies, and so forth on this project? Is there a requirement for using, for example, our local hardware stores or our local anything on a project of $17 million?
As it is required, it is lowest responsible bidder, whoever that may be.
Do the local people bid?
On a project of this magnitude with this specialty, probably not.
Well, I think that's sad. I think that we should have, if the local people are trying to make enough money to survive, then maybe they should be part of making the money from a project this large. I'm not in awe of the size, frankly. I'm in awe of the participation of this community that's footing the bill, is what I'm most interested in. So I'm wondering if there's any way that we could really take a look at how much money is coming into the local economy from a project this size. That's what I would like to see, if there's any way we could find that out. Please. When these people, our local businesses are scraping by. They have the lowest average income in the state of Montana. So how are we doing? And
I just think of one economic problem. If we didn't do this project,
yeah,
we would be in violation of water quality standards, and we would be fined a lot of money for that, and that would affect the economic outlook of everyone. And if the water treatment plant failed, we'd be in a world of hurt too. So,
and that's what I was told 10 years ago.
so it's economically wise to move forward and create a plant that will operate and serve this community well, like the last one has for the next 30 to 40 years. And 30 or 40 years ago, some administration and some commission was here making the same decision to do something that now has served us all well for the last 30, 40 years. And I think that's the economic responsibility that we have. And what happens is that this project isn't being paid by the property, it's being paid by the sewer users, and they'll benefit for it for 30 to 40 years until we have to build a new one. And lost my really good point. We'll come back.
It'll come back.
Yeah, I almost had it there. But you can see that there's a cost for not doing it.
Oh, I know.
property values would plummet. You know, Livingston would be known as have dirty water pumping into the Yellowstone. We probably wouldn't be able to do it. So, you know, I know what this was. This will be paid over how many years? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years? 40 years. This will be paid over 40 years. So it's not being paid all at once. So in 40 years, it will be paid off by those who are using it, you know, through that length of time. So, you know, our finance department has also done everything possible to get us the lowest interest rates possible in the financing of this project. So I think the administration, the city, and the commission has done a pretty good job of being just stewards in this project moving forward, seeing that, you know, it's a requirement to do. It's our duty to do. That is one of our missions, is to provide, you know, those type of things. So anyway, answer the how it affects the economy here. It would affect it in a disastrous way if we didn't do it.
And I was told that 10 years ago too, when E. coli was going into the river. And the remedy was going to be the water treatment plant that we in fact built. So then it turns out 5 years later, we still have E. coli going into the river, even though that was going to be the remedy.
I think we need to clarify what's going into the river. I don't believe it's the E. coli. I believe it's the particulates, and help me out here, the ppms, PCEs. Those, it's not the E. coli, it's the level of contaminants. I don't know the chemicals, please, someone, engineer, help me out here. That's where we're in violation of, not the E. coli.
But I don't want anybody feeling defensive. I am just really empathic with our local businesses. I know how much our little hardware stores struggle and how much is not purchased at their little stores for a project that we are paying a significant amount of money for. My interest is in having us take a serious look at economics, again, empathy for our businesses that are struggling, and seeing how this commission can figure out a way to really enhance that. I think there are avenues that can happen, and I don't want you guys to feel defensive about this, but I've been involved in cities for almost 50 years. I've watched a lot of projects go in, and I still go back to the human scale. So those are my comments.
Very much.
To respond to something I said, Shannon?
If I may, Chairman? Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to just clarify that none of the city's drinking water wells are in the plume. So all of our drinking water is tested monthly, and there's no issues with that. The wastewater treatment plant is in the plume. I think this commission and this community have done an excellent job of compromising on a project that we can afford and still be good stewards of the Yellowstone River. And we have that with our current design of this IPS plant. So that's something I think we all need to be very proud of. Yes, the upgrade is mandated by our discharge permit requirements and having to biologically treat nutrients that go into the Yellowstone River that have negative effects on the river. But keep in mind, this plant is built for a population of projection for 2030, which is 11,500 people. And if this city continues to grow, we have a lot of additional capacity for this plant for residential and economic development for many years to come. So that there is a value that comes with that. We certainly encourage any local contractors. I'm going to go without saying, it's going to be hard for a contractor to not use Fisher concrete for this plant. Fisher is located within 1.5 miles of the location. So there's gonna be a lot of concrete in this plant, so I'm assuming that the low bidder is gonna have a contract with them. And certainly, if there are skilled laborers and equipment and materials and things that these contractors can use, they will solicit that in this community. So I think by having a contractor that actually is competent in project of this size, which we have several in the state of Montana, and I think we're very fortunate for that. They have every opportunity to come in and utilize our services that this community provides. But because of USDA having a lot of the stipulations and the funding agencies, we have Buy American requirements in this project, and there are certain minority requirements for subcontractors and things of that nature. But anyone that comes in and bids this project has every right to talk to local electricians, carpenters, service people, and hire them for this project. And for that, I haven't done an economic study, but I can tell you on an 18-month project, and as large of a contractor and all the subcontractors doing this, they are going to be patronizing our restaurants, buying fuel here, food, supplies, things of that nature. So I think it will add a bit of benefit to our local businesses. Even though maybe that their address isn't Livingston, Montana, from the general contractor aspect. I don't know if you want to add to that at all, Scott, but
I just want to clarify that the regulatory driver for the project is ammonia. So that's the number one thing we're fixing. There are other water quality parameters that got to be improved by the project, but the hammer from DEQ was about ammonia.
Thank you. Appreciate your time on this.
Appreciate it.
I still want to say one more time, in the history of my watching this commission and Livingston, Montana, we have gone from really insisting on using local businesses to not as much insistence. And I think it's just something for us to all take a look at and view again. How much do we require local businesses to participate in these things? Thanks.
Is there any other public comment? Any other public comment? Last public comment on resolution 4720. All right, can we get a motion from the commission?
I make a motion, we pass resolution number 4720.
I'll second.
So motion by Commissioner Friedman, second by Commissioner Holman. Any clarifications, Commission? Roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Holder,
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Four. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for coming out tonight and presenting your materials. Really appreciate it. All right, we move on now to action items. We have action item A, which is discussed through tonight, Joe Purpose Chapter of Child Unlimited request for waiver of garbage disposal fees for Yellowstone River cleanup. Lowy, that letter didn't make it in here, right?
There's just we had a formal letter. I don't believe we had a formal letter. There was an email requesting to.
I gave it to you.
Oh.
He sent it to me. I gave it to you. Last meeting. Okay.
We have standardly waived the fees, the garbage disposal fees for the Trout Unlimited cleanup that is performed annually on the Yellowstone River. So we would ask that, again, the commission consider waiving those garbage disposal fees for this important project that cleans up our river. And I'm not certain if anyone from Trout Unlimited is actually here. See, I don't think so.
Do we know what the expense is about?
I don't know how much Shannon stepped out. So
$100,000?
certainly, absolutely.
Under 500?
I would say how we're
What are you gonna No, they're not bringing cars in.
No,
Is that a critical question?
I have gotten to this. And, I'm trying to think of how many of the big the big movable things. There's probably 5 or something close to that.
how much of a waiver, dollar wise, would you estimate the river cleanup is?
It seems like the last couple of years we've been averaging anywhere from about 4,000 to 6,000 pounds, which is 2 to 3 tons. So we're talking less than $200.
And they recycle. Bring the metals and.
And I actually have participated. I think it's a great event.
I
Personally,
do too. And they have great prizes. If you go. It's fun.
Right, well, is there a motion on action item one?
I will move to approve the request waiver for the garbage disposal fees for the Yellowstone River cleanup by Joe Brooks, chapter of Trout County Limited.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, is there any other question clarification? Is there any public comment? Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogler,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Yes.
Motion passes. Action item B. Discuss, approve, deny Front Street Trail Connector Grant return. That's a while.
We never like to talk about returning grants, but sometimes we have to. This grant was for the Front Street Trail Connector that would create a connector along the railroad tracks in that easement along Front Street. The grant award itself was $20,000. Our in-kind in this grant was well over $65,000. So when you look at kind of a return on investment, which is some of the discipline that we've added to our grant pursuits in the last couple of years, this is one that did not have a great return on investment in terms of what we're getting for in-kind and what we're getting in a match in grant funds. We were given until October of 2017 to construct this trail. The location is problematic in that it is not only MRL's right of way, it is also one of the only places we can store snow in the winter. So it is not would not be a full year use type connector trail. Subsequent to our request to begin getting this going, which was our intention, MRL has given us a letter dated October 24th that appears in the packet, where they have denied our request for a temporary occupancy permit, which would allow for the construction of this trail to move forward. With the denial of that temporary occupancy permit, we would be forced to do re-engineering, look at redesigning the trail itself, which would just lead to escalated costs of our in-kind. That would take our in-kind probably over $100,000 against a $20,000 award. Given our general fund and some of the fiscal challenges that we're looking at, this is not a prudent project to pursue at this time. The city will remain committed to connecting to that trail system in other ways as we move forward with our other development projects and all of the growth on the north side as well. But this project in particular is just not one that the administration can see continuing on the path of just for a $20,000 grant award. So it's our recommendation at this point to turn back that award. We have not expended any funds yet towards this project. So there's no out-of-pocket cost when we seek reimbursement for it. It's just really turning it back and saying thank you very much, but given kind of some of the conditional changes as well as MRL's denial of the occupancy permit, we can't move forward with it right now. So it would be our recommendation that you vote to allow us to turn back that grant with sincere thanks and deep gratitude, but still turn back the grant.
Thank you very much. Is there some commission discussion on this? No? Commissioner Hoagland?
I know Parks and Trails have this as, well, top 5 priority when they thought, I will use it, I'm part of Parks and Trails, but thought that it was going to be more feasible, less in kind, and Parks and Trails supports pulling up this grant as well as returning it, yes. Also, I have 2 questions. Do we know why, other than this very vague letter from MRL, why they are against it?
This just denying the permit, takes us into another cost realm that just, at this point, it's not even necessarily worth pursuing the whys. Because it's adding to the cost exponentially, just to even try to consider teaching.
It would be nice to know.
I can certainly follow up with that. Even as is the income, I think is a little extreme.
Yes, that's a huge part of it. Yeah, I won't have any statements on MRL right now, but I want to, but I'll keep them to myself. And then, I guess if we ever, on to that is, if we ever find out, because potentially there's some real possibilities of MRL land and trails or even sidewalk extensions that we're gonna have to consider, so there'd be a nice answer ahead in time. But I get it, as to right now, it's not as much of a priority, so thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? My one question is, I always thought, and obviously I'm wrong, that this was, that the trail was within the state right away, not MRL.
It's mostly in the state right away. It's just in order to construct it, there's no way that we could not keep equipment and personnel off of MRO property.
So it's not that they were in their right of way. We're going to have people and construction equipment in their right of way, and that's what they're denying.
And I think initially when this was all discussed, there was an oversight that you couldn't feasibly build a trail this size in such a narrow right of way owned by MDT. MDT has been on board with this and allowing this trail within the Front Street right of way from day one, but their right of way only exceeds past the curb and gutter on that south side of Front Street by less than 10 feet. And when you're building a 6-foot trail, we needed to get permission to access their property for a construction permit per se.
That, to me, that, no, I think we're gonna have to ask MRL. To me, that just seems.
An extension of what you just said. Just so they allow us onto their property to move snow in a sense, or to dump snow. Correct?
Yes.
But not to build the trail. So that, I'm not connecting very well on this one.
Dots aren't connected.
But I think we're on their property partly with where the snow piles are, correct?
It is,
Like,
and that's
yeah,
been
like-
something that's historically been probably handled at the local level. That when you start asking about acquiring easements and having use agreements, you have to go through the Missoula Office in Engineering and Right-of-Way Acquisition. And
We can talk to Jim Willis.
but I mean, that's certainly a large part of this, but I think the one concern that the administration has is really the estimate for the in-kind work is drastically undervalued. And, just my latest estimates on doing the work, exceeds $100,000. And if we were required to go in and hire, say, TD&H and their land surveyors to survey the whole property and define the right-of-way for the whole 1.25-mile corridor, you're looking at pretty expensive engineering and surveying costs. Just to,
Understood. I mean, this other thing is minor compared to that. All right, is there any public comment on, thank you very much. Is there any public comment on the grant return?
Dan Durgan, 419 South Yellowstone Street. Doesn't city code require the private property and the commercial property on the north side of Front Street to have a sidewalk? And if it does, has been thought about just enforcing that code so there was a sidewalk along Front Street?
That's a good question.
It is, and I don't know off the top of my head, so that's something we could look into and get back to.
It's worth considering, I think.
Certainly. It's a
Being the
requirement.
property owner being MRL.
No, on the north side.
Right, the other.
Lots of times when I walk my kids down Front Street around the street, I thought, why isn't the bowling alley and crash repair, why aren't they required to maintain a sidewalk as everyone else is? Because then you could go on that side.
Okay.
Right.
I can, I don't know.
Good question. All right, great question. All right, so do we have a motion to return the Front Street grant? Everyone at once. Oh, you have
Just a question, if you decide to pull the grant, does that basically stop the conversation? Oh, so it's okay.
yes, state your name and address.
Sorry about that. Charles Hubble, 102 Star Road. So if the grant is pulled, does that basically mean the conversation is over? As in his question is not going to be answered, or
No.
we're going to pursue it on?
No, we would still
Yeah,
still
so
pursue it
pursue it,
before,
right?
and the administration remains committed to that trail connectivity
That's
piece,
all
it's
I
just we
was
can't do it this way.
Cool.
That's all.
Sorry.
And I believe it was two different questions. One's the trail on the south side, and one was sidewalks on the north side.
Right. What I was basically meaning was just that the whole conversation was just going to stop once this was voted on.
No,
But you answered that. So, okay, thank you.
Not at all. We'll continue those wonderful conversations. All right, so did we get a motion? Nope. Okay, it's not all at once.
No? I make a motion, we deny the Front Street Trail contractor grant return program.
I'm not sure if we can say it that way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Approve the return.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work. I approve to return the grant for the Front Street Trail connector. Make a motion.
That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner Schwartz, second by Commissioner Friedman. We've had discussion, answered all our questions. Other comment, roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Holden,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
4.
Motion passes. The next discussion item is setting budget meeting in mid-April for general fund review. So we have 2 meetings in April. The 4th and the 18th. So you're looking at something in between or after?
correct.
How does the 11th sound? How would the 11th be for the administration? Does that sound okay? Does that give our new city manager enough time to get acclimated?
I'll be here a week.
I don't have any choice.
I think that'll be okay.
I'm wide open. You wide open? So you like to start? Shall we have a- what time would we like to start at 6? 5:30? 5:30. 5:30 on the 11th? Yes,
So I
I'm
don't know.
hoping that we could do that before we got here. Of course, we don't even have to have that meeting until we've been here a month and a half.
Yeah.
We can set that.
We'll throw everything on them. That's,
We had this meeting already to discuss things, came up with our priorities.
Yeah.
And we can't set that meeting because that was not noticed as an agenda item.
That's right.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
We could put it on the agenda for the 4th if you would like. That will be his first meeting here.
That's enough. One week.
But we'll put it on the agenda for the 4th and to set the meeting date for the finalization of the goals meeting.
Give you more time to.
Okay.
Okay, so we are setting the meeting for, that is noticed here, for the budget, for the general fund on April 11th at 5:30.
And this will just be for the general fund. Enterprise funds will follow after in subsequent budget meetings like we do. This is solely the general fund.
Perfect. Everyone got it? All right. Action item D, which is an addendum, discuss approve deny leasing of rehabilitated retained vault space. All right. So, Ms. Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item was requested by Commissioner Sandberg, and I noticed that she's not here this evening. The question was over what the city's position would be as far as retained vault space should we have an occasion where a vault owner has decided rather to fill in their vaults to retain it, and how the city would kind of address that in terms of defining that relationship in the form of a lease, understanding that that is in city right away, and generally those terms should be defined by some kind of a lease arrangement. At this point, we do not have anybody that has sought to retain the lease that is part of this vault project.
Which year's vault?
This year's vault project, correct.
And are we not filling in all vaults possible, even that aren't in this project?
They're just the ones that are in this year's project.
I thought they're all.
I thought it was complete.
No, the First Interstate Bank has a rather extensive vault, and we've already been meeting with them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay.
And
Yeah, we knew about them, but
and certainly, we found that Dan has a small one in his frontage, and then we've had the stairway kind of issues that Carla Pettit has brought up at the Pickle Barrel, and I think Joe has some smaller just staircases, not certainly the magnitude and size of what is at First Interstate or Paley and Brown or the Walk.
all right, so for this year, there are no vault owners or vaults that's working. No vaults that are going to be kept.
Correct. That's good.
Commissioner Holman.
Wasn't there some reference to someone getting a letter? Wasn't that what
There
this
was, the owners of the frame garden had initially sought to possibly retain part of their vault for storage. We did send them a letter with a draft of the agreement that you have here. Again, defining that space and that relationship between the two parties. We used storage unit space area rentals as kind of the price point for how we would charge for leasing that space, and then reduce that somewhat, just as a basis for opening that discussion. But subsequently, that particular owner decided to fill in the vault.
They have the cost from our estimates. Was that filling them?
They did.
The wall. And could we include them in that whole scenario where we discussed, was that included in those costs?
Yes.
Or they were included in the
That's right, and it was done as an addendum for providing the cost to retain.
Okay. All right, so we're here to discuss it. Is there any discussion? Any commissioner who wants to ask questions or provide insight, suggestions? Commissioner Schwartz?
Regarding the procedure for coming up with a lease agreement like that, is that something that should come before the city commission first before it goes out? I'm just not sure protocol here, you know, being, still me if I done it here, but.
Well,
Especially with the letter going out to, business owner without us being aware of it. So it's almost like setting policy. We're making policy of our input, I guess.
well,
Or am I wrong?
I think normally we probably do it that way.
Yeah.
And we have it now. We'll do it that way. Would you agree?
Secondly, I don't
I don't see.
know what they're to approve, discuss, or deny since, he's keeping it. I'd like to just table it, and revisit it if it arises again. Which it would with First Interstate.
And-
Or whoever has all of it.
Yeah, and just to keep you in the loop, I mean, I did forward this draft on to Joe Hanser, the president, just so they can use that as, part of their deciding process, or if they're gonna fill theirs in or save it.
And part of the subsequent discussion as well.
I think probably what we want to do is to have a clear idea of when that decision needs to be made before we reach into the construction season for the next phase and anyone might be affected. So that would probably be sometime in November. So late October, early November, we should probably scratch it in for the calendar
Table it until it's
until it's
needed and relevant.
That's right. Is everyone okay with that? That was a suggestion. Okay. Would you like us to make a vote on tabling?
Yes.
So the motion would be the table. Action
I motion to table, action item C, D, the addendum, yes.
Could you give a little descriptor to it, just?
Yeah, action item D, the vault lease contract.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Schwartz, a second by Commissioner Friedman. Is there any public discussion? Anyone, add anything from the public? Okay.
I do. I don't know if this is a stupid question or not, but it just, Charles Hubble, 102 Star Road, 124 East Calendar. So if the city has the ability to lease the vaults, then doesn't that legally mean that they have ownership of the vaults? So why exactly do the businesses have to pay for anything to fill the vaults if they don't own it?
Oh,
Or
I
not?
think I might be able to answer that one.
I
You're
don't know
not,
that one.
you're not paying for anything to fill it, the city is, and the URA. All that a building owner is paying is for the wall,
Okay.
to connect with their foundation.
So I'm new to the city and everything. URA is funded by who?
The URA is an advisory board to the commission. It
Right.
operates the TIP district. The TIP is the tax income financing district, which you're a building owner, right?
Yeah.
The mint?
No, I own
The fire hall.
The fire hall. So that's fine.
There is a border, and you can find the border on the city website someplace. You want to take a little bit of time to figure out what it is.
I've looked at it, yeah.
Yeah, there's a border, it's called the TIP district. Anyone within that TIP district are part of their taxes are going to fund
fund the
improvements within that district.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the building owners are paying. Is that true? I mean, it's essentially what's happening. That's
Yeah.
where the money comes from, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So just, I thought it was gonna, just, to me, that's an interesting question or thought, because the whole discussion over a couple of years' time here was the building owners that pay a certain percentage of it, but then if they're not even the owners of it, if you're able to lease it to the
Foundation loans.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's one of those, I've had this conversation multiple times. It's one
Sounds
of
like,
those
yeah.
things that's a carryover from the early 1900s.
Gotcha.
You know, there was some most likely agreement between the building owners and the city saying you can utilize that space, and at some point between them and today, the space became less value or less use to the property owners, and you know, everyone forgot about it because they were unsafe.
Gotcha.
And until we had to come tear up and put new sidewalks in, and we had to look at, whoa, there's something here we have to deal with, how do we deal with it? You know, this was the first time the city, the building owners, and the commission really had to make a serious look at how to make that work, and since there was a lot of money involved, how to fund it.
Gotcha.
Sorry, it was gonna be a short meeting. Just real quickly, yeah, I know First Interstate's vaults are a big deal for them, like, cause they have utilities and all kinds of stuff in them. So they're making major decisions what to do with their vaults in their building. If this is factoring into their decision, then the commission should be sure that they actually want to charge rent to them. If they're factoring this into a major decision, but it's kind of an empty or vague threat that the commission doesn't want to charge them rent, they should know that. Instead of tabling that until they've made major decisions.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Me too, tonight. You want to run for commission?
Yeah, that's gonna happen. Just paint a big red target on the back of my head too.
What's that?
So they could also just paint a big red target on the back of my head.
Well, why do you think of all? So that's a good point. Do you have
We
any,
can certainly bring it back before they're reaching final decisions and cross it.
well, let's do that. So the motion still stands. Any other public comment? Okay, roll call.
Chairperson Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Holbrook,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton.
Yes.
Commissioner Schwartz.
4.
Motion passes. All right, city manager comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First this evening, I would like to recognize Chief McInnes, who has been awarded a Chief Training Officer credential from the Commission on Professional Credentialing, recognizing his commitment to ongoing training within his department. So thank you, Chief McInnes, for that. And as it stands currently, this is my last commission meeting as the interim city manager. Bringing a close to our date nights with my husband at our commission meetings. I'd like to thank the members of the commission who've taken their time to be supportive of me in this process and meet with me, and it's something of value, certainly for the incoming city manager to have that one-on-one time with each of you, and I would strongly encourage you all to make that commitment with Mr. Carter's when he gets here. It is of value. I'd also like to thank all of the employees of the city of Livingston, as well as the leadership team members, past and present, my family, my husband, and certainly last, I'd like to thank our former city manager, Ed Meese, for his continued friendship in what could have been a very awkward situation. He still exemplified professional integrity in being supportive of all of us and our community, of which he is still a very proud citizen. So thank you to Mr. Meese for that continued support and commitment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well. Thank you. All right, city commission comments, Mr. Sandberg. No comments. Mr. Schwartz.
I don't have anything.
Okay, Commissioner Friedman.
I thought we were at the Asheville Awards or something. So we have 3 new people starting here.
We do, and, the new city attorney, we do not have a signed, acceptance yet, I'll have that on Friday, so I'll refrain from formally announcing, but, the tentative start date for the new city attorney is April 10th.
I certainly want to thank you for quite an experience.
It has been that.
You did a great job. Now you have a regular job.
I do,
Okay. Good luck.
thank you.
Well, not completely regular, except for a couple, at least a month, okay?
That's it.
I want to thank you as well. Very approachable, very easy to communicate concerns with, and always are professional, and we could have asked for better for filling in your role at a crazy time. So I appreciate it. I have to just mention my traffic study. Can't wait. Okay. Yeah, we have more letters coming, as I'm sure you guys have heard, and I'm not the only concerned person in the community. I know all 3 of us at this table have stated it, as commissioners, we've stated it. So, I would love to put on the agenda at some point, I'd love your guys' feedback on impact studies and possibly a little lesson on them, as far as I think about this because of development, potential major developments coming up, you know, and sorry, study was in my brain. Fees. Ignore the study. I don't need that under. Yeah. No one put that in the newspaper, please. I didn't say another study. Impact fees and how we can possibly understand them better. Are there changes we could make that can impact the city? Because I know a lot of communities, when development starts to happen, they start to change that, and how they, and I do not know very much about impact fees. So I would love something in the future. It doesn't have to be soon, but with development potentially coming in the next year or so. There's a hospital event, I guess, we're coming up. I know we all got letters for it coming up on the 25th. I am actually out of town, but does it need to be noticed because there's potential for free? I mean, I would go normally. It's an event in celebration of all the funding and the hospitalized. On the 25th.
25th. It's in the mailbox. Choose to go look.
No business done, so we don't have to.
Lisa's office. Harold.
Last-
It's Harold's office.
We did, yeah, we would still notice it, but just like a business.
Okay. Let's see. Last
It's the
one,
25th, I'm not sure what time.
5 to 7.
Mr. Hoagland has the floor.
Last thing for me, and then whoever, but tomorrow night, Parks and Trails will discuss the off-leash. The final discussion, and we'll vote on a recommendation for or against that, the off-leash area, which will then be brought to the commission. So that's tomorrow night. Okay. So if anyone has anything you'd like to say to the Parks and Trails Committee, as well as it's been online, we've done surveys, different things, informational gathering, and opinion gathering. So that's all.
Thank you very much. I too would like to thank you, Lisa, for all the hard work you've endured in the last year and a half. I have to say that in my tenure as being a commissioner, it's probably been one of the more difficult times for any administration to adjust to and to manage, and you've done an excellent job in handling that. And I think we want to shake your hand. I think the entire commission wants to shake your hand.
Great job. Okay, trying to get the name leg on, okay. Good job.
I should have gave you some forewarning.
I don't want to take a header like an idiot.
I think in some of these difficult situations, you've kept your head for the most part. And you've done a really good job at addressing some very difficult situations we've had to handle. So, I really appreciate that. And I know that you didn't plan to be doing this part-time job for a year and a half. And yeah, we did, when you stepped there for the first time, we didn't say a year and a half. Probably weren't aware of all the difficulties that might arise. I don't think any of us did. But, really do appreciate it. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say. My understanding is that, who mentioned 3 new people we have? The city manager on the 4th, the city attorney on the 11th or 10th.
And I believe Paige is still here. Paige Federer has joined us
Okay.
March 1 as our new chief finance officer. So she is filling Jesse Holmes' role.
Okay.
So she has joined us and is on board.
Well, you're very interested in numbers. We have lots of-
She's a CPA, so I think so.
Got a CPA after her name there.
And we have 2 new police officers joining
Oh,
as well. So we'll be back up to our full complement, full staffing for the first time in too many years. So thank you to Chief Johnson and the Police Commission for the work they've done on getting those folks hired.
great. Are we down on any other staff that you know of? At least we're out on hiring right at the moment?
We have 1 vacancy in finance with Anna Cunningham's exit. We are, of course, recruiting for our complement of seasonals in the Public Works Department, and we will complete our recruiting for rec and pool staff. Can't believe we're talking about the pool already. And we'll be finalizing those hires for the summer season as well, and we will potentially have 1 opening in Public Works, although it would be open to union membership first, so it's not a public opening at this point.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, we've come to that wonderful portion of the evening. Is there any public comment? Yes, please come forward and comment.
Patricia Grable, 204 East Calendar Street.
Charles Hubble, 124 East Calendar Street.
We're just coming tonight to make a quick public comment about an effort that we have gone through since the informal meeting with the Public Works Department on the downtown streets. And what happened was we heard at the meeting that there was a need for to survey people, and we heard at the meeting that there was a lot of concern that people hadn't heard or hadn't been noticed or didn't understand a lot of the issues involved with the downtown streets. So a group of us got to work and spent 3 days going to everybody and polling them, and the net result is an Excel spreadsheet, 6 pages long, with 74 downtown building owner businesses listed. And so we went to our neighbors. This is an informal thing. It's just conversations and people talking to each other and in discussions with each other. Isn't like a big hotshot survey, but we did put forth an effort to try to reach everybody. We actually got votes or recommendations from 49 of those 74 people who were looking at whether or not we complete the streets downtown this summer or wait till next spring. And some people were really quite adamant about doing the streets this summer. And Charles is one of the people. We ended up with about 80% of the people that we contacted saying they really want to do it this summer. About 20% of the people that we sat down with and talked with, and sometimes it was a half-hour conversation, sometimes it was just, in and out, no, you're busy, but kind of thing. So there's a real interest in doing it this summer. We had, and Charles, I think you were one of the people who was really interested in getting it done this summer.
I'm not gonna say that I was part of the actual, I mean, I did answer part of it. I was one of the people that was contacted, but my only question was, is that at the one meeting, the Public Works said that they were ready to rock and roll with the project, started a month early in June, get it going. And the problem was in the last meeting, it sounded very, very serious, like it got pushed because there was a few people that pushed to possibly go in the next year. So I just wanted to basically say that I think it's the majority, because I do agree with it, because I have informal, talking to quite a few different business owners that agree, that say, we just get it done and get it going. Don't push it off for another entire season, is really what I'm trying to get at, is that no matter what we do, and I was in total agreement, I'm pretty sure I agree with you guys, is that just, you've already got everything done, ready to go, to get the bid process going, to get the project going. If we started over again, we could potentially be losing an entire year, I think is what you said in the meeting. So I just wanted to talk to you guys and say that I completely agree with that, completely agree with what she says is 80%. And everybody I've ever talked to, I haven't actually spoken to anybody myself that says, yeah, let's push it off and do some more studies. So that's really all I wanted to speak about, is I'd really like to see that project go forward. And just to be clarified too, some of the arguments were brought up was talking about businesses we're going to very serious, that we're going to suffer from, when it's done. Well, I own 2 businesses. I own a building in 2, actually, Staples and Spa and the gym. I can guarantee you I'm going to get hit pretty hard. So whether or not I survive, it's my fault, my problem. I want the project to go forward because I can make it through. In the long term, it's going to really pay off for everyone. So that's all I wanted to say.
Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
And I had one question to ask, a couple questions what we had to ask of Shannon. Shannon, when is the last day that the bids could be let and still go forward with the street project this summer? Is he here?
As far as starting by July,
June or July? Originally
I mean-
proposal was June.
well,
Excuse me. I'm reminded that this is not a question answer, but just public comment.
Okay. Well, may I ask those questions after the meeting?
Certainly.
Okay, thanks so much. So the reason I asked that was we would like to make sure that through this with such a strong voice of the downtown business owners and building owners, if there's a need for a special meeting of the city commission, we would like to request that so that we don't miss the bid window that we need and then just automatically have to do it next year because we weren't diligent in getting the bid window. So if we could take a serious look at that, we'd really appreciate it. As downtown building owners and businesses.
I'm just gonna refer to the administration on this, if there's something that the administration can just handle, or does the commission need to weigh in?
We could certainly handle, the bid process. This is, funding that's already been budgetarily accounted for.
I mean, as far as
Will
the
be
start
for
date.
this budget and start date. If I may, after that meeting, we were charged with conducting a survey. We have completed 40 contacts. Our results are directly opposite of what Ms. Graybill has brought. So I would ask that you provide that information so we can validate it against the businesses that we've contacted to make sure that we have similar information and that folks aren't changing their answers midstream, and really try to get a consensus around what is going to be best, understanding that we certainly are not going to be able to please everybody.
Sure.
But certainly our results are in direct contradiction to yours in terms of the timing, and we were looking primarily at folks immediately impacted by this project. So if you could provide us your list of data so that we can validate it against ours, that would be appreciated.
What I'd appreciate is a meeting. I did not do this this is confidential to the people. When you're in business, you don't want your name out there in front of everybody and your choices out there in front of everybody's. But I think the difference too is that we went to so many. I mean, but we have 25 of the 74 we initially looked at who we have not yet been able to reach. And I suspect that your data, you haven't had a 100% return on the letters. So there's a kind of a amorphous thing out there that we're working with.
We did focus our survey on folks that were going to be impacted directly and immediately by the construction in their immediate business area.
Yeah,
And those are the folks most potentially adversely affected, depending on what schedule is picked. So again, certainly the administration would be happy to set up a meeting with you.
that'd be great.
Provided that information will be given so that we can validate our data. Otherwise, we will go with the data that we have
Yeah,
in
and
terms of decision
I
making.
appreciate that. We will do that because I think it's valuable. Plus, we have so many anecdotal comments that we would love to give you as well, where people just had a lot to say, and we're interested in what they have to say. So thank you so much. So if you call me and set up a meeting and we can take it from there, I could call you.
Why don't you give me a call? We could set up something perhaps next week. This week is
Well, I
significant.
can't do that next week. My son is coming to town.
Okay, then we'll about do the second week in April, which is better anyway with
Well-
Mr. Carter starting. We could include him in that meeting as well.
I'm concerned about the bid deadline.
We'll be fine.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there any other public comment? Come on up, state your name and address for the record. And fire away.
Warren Nady, 310 South 8th Street. As a representative of the other part of the city that hasn't been represented up here already, if that made sense, I would just like to thank Ms. Lowry for her work over the last year and a half. I, as you may remember, was up front and center a number of times previously, and much of what I said and still feel at that time was very negative. The last year and a half have been really a breath of fresh air. I mean, it's greatly appreciated by, I believe, everyone else, or at least most of, I can't speak for everyone else, of the community. So thank you very much.
It's certainly a credit to this entire leadership team as well as all of the employees of the city of Livingston. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other public comment? Okay. Hearing none, I entertain a motion for adjournment. Is there one? So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 8:55.
Come up with that fee. Cut it for all parts of the cost of doing the streets.
I don't have the number right on top of my
Which is more than, I got it.
It's very loud.
Well,